Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Toxic Radio at Night. We're all in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm here to talk about all things toxic and taboo. No topic is off the table. If it's toxic to our families, toxic to our culture, toxic to our country, and toxic to our way of life, we'll talk about it. When all the others decided to go toxic left, we stood firmly right. Greetings from my hideout, somewhere in the rural parts of Canada, where nothing is as it seems, nothing is normal, because the toxic darkness is seeping into every fiber of our existence. I am your host, Denise in Canada. Tonight's guest host is the Grizzly Patriot himself, Mark Friesen. How about we start with your introduction again? I know a lot of people know you, but maybe someone out there is going to hear this video and not know who the heck this Mark Friesen is.
Sure.
So go for it.
You want me to do that now?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. My name's Mark Friesen, and I'm just sort of a regular schmo that after 9/11, I wanted to understand the world. I wanted to understand what created that situation and that incredibly horrible scene that we're all exposed to. And so, of course, I started with Islam and political Islam and jihad and extremism and all that sort of stuff. And I learned a lot about, that end of things. But, time and time again, going down those particular rabbit holes would lead me to other offshoots of rabbit holes. And always leading back to the UN, right?
Okay.
And to globalism, and it was at every turn. So I decided, well, I better dive into what's happening on a global level at the UN, and this Agenda 21 kept coming up.
Yeah.
And at that time, of course, it was Agenda 21. Now it's Agenda 2030, but
right.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that was an enormous rabbit hole, of course, because as I moved along in my understanding and through my research, it was also evolving, right? So this whole agenda, as I learned along the way, it is the root of every single one of our problems in Canada. And not only in Canada, but throughout Western civilization and really around the world. But it's very detrimental to Western nations. So anyways, as I learned more and understood more, I kept telling myself, people need to know this. People need to see this. They need to understand what's happening in their world.
When did you start realizing that no one knew what was going on? That they were in the dark? Like, what kind of... I've
been on Facebook since 2007, I think, right when I first started.
Oh,
and
wow. Pretty
much from then, I have, I can't say I was terribly active. I mean, I had young kids and I had a full-time job in prison. So, whatever. But whatever time I did have, I'd spend researching or reading books or whatever, try to understand. And I was sharing it, sharing it on Facebook. And of course, referred to as conspiracy theorist. And granted, at that time, a lot of it was like wading through a maze of information, because it was either, legitimate or verifiable information, or there was a lot of crazy kooky stuff. But
right.
At the same time, the legitimate information, the verifiable information, was also crazy. So it was really hard to fish through all that stuff. And I can see, even to this very day, how people who don't understand what's happening can see this as being conspiracy theory in nature. Now, of course, they demonize the whole idea of conspiracy theory, but
that's because they want to just,
at the end of the day,
they want to shut people down.
Absolutely. They don't want people to find out the truth. And sometimes you have to go through some pretty dark holes to find the truth. And some of it is just theory. But that's still okay.
Yeah.
For people who are critically minded and can assess things on their own, it's okay to go through conspiracy theory, because that's how you actually end up getting to the truth. So, I mean, theory is part of the process. So, you know, they demonize this whole idea of theorizing over conspiracy, but at the end of the day, conspiracies happen everywhere around the world on a daily basis, right? So it's not like conspiracy is this myth.
No.
But
people are conspiring against us.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Because the truth is coming out. President Trump is making sure of it, and other patriotic leaders are bringing out the truth. They're exposing it at great cost to them.
Yeah.
So, there are people conspiring, so we're not sure. We get little bits of truth coming out, and the rest of it is, okay, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, but the truth is going to come out eventually.
Well, it's the example I like to use. So is it a conspiracy or is it a plan? And what's the difference? Because in 1967, 68, late 60s, a group by the name of the Club of Rome, which is still in existence today, are essentially sponsored and funded by Rockefeller. They're essentially the group that initiated this whole sustainable development agenda and conceptualized it and put it in motion. So was that a plan or was that a conspiracy? Or is there a difference, right? So so am I plan theorizing? So at the end of the day, it's all just narrative, it's perception, exactly. It's trying to shame people into not going any further or not promoting these ideas that they are responsible for. So whatever, it is what it is. So I just, at the end of the day, I just realized that there's a lot of people that didn't understand what was happening. So with that knowledge and with that understanding, and then putting some historical context into it as far as Canadian politics, with the Conservative Party signing on to Agenda 21 in 1992, and seeing how they moved in that direction, and then the Liberals, of course, followed in that direction, and then the CPC, when they were in government, they did the same thing, and they signed it, they brought it into law, actually, in 2008, and signed the latest version in 2015, just before that election.
Yeah.
And so, both our establishment is responsible for this.
Yeah.
And if this is, such a great plan, why haven't they told anybody about it? Why haven't they educated the masses on this global governance?
Yeah, why are they so secretive about
global
it?
Plan?
Yeah.
Right. So, and to this very day, they haven't educated anybody on this agenda, yet they've all signed on to it and instituted law to back it up.
And I'm in absolute shock at the things I stumble upon by accident, because you're doing a little search here and there, and you're like, whoa! I was looking for something else, and I came across this. What the heck is Harper signing on with this secret deal with China, and there was no transparency, and this happened? And I'm like, and I just found that out this week, and it's exhausting. Like, someone complained on Twitter the other day, I'm just exhausted with this. I said, yeah, well, that's what it's like when you're a soldier in a war, but we can't stop. We can't just give up like this.
Exactly.
We're at a point as a country that it makes a huge difference. Like, I have a whole different story than you, because I didn't care. Like, 9/11 happened. I remember standing in my living room just in tears and in shock. I thought the whole world was going to go to war, but I didn't pay attention to politics. I could care less, because I knew, and I think maybe some of the teachers in school may have influenced this, because they basically said from the formation of Canada, all it was about power and money, like the power and greed. And I knew then, okay, well, I'm a kid and then a young adult. I have no influence over people that have that much power and that much money. There's no effect. I could talk till I was blue in the face to these politicians and whatever, and they're not going to listen to me. They don't care. They're going to do what they want anyway. So I ignored politics. And then my fiance said, no, you might want to start paying attention to what's going on in the world, just in general, because I just had other things going on. Oh my goodness. So I started simple, a couple years ago, maybe 3, time goes so fast, 3 or 4 years ago, and then like you, okay, this is going down this rabbit hole, and you're like, oh my word, this is a mess. But it's not, maybe 50, 60 years ago, you could ignore politics, not a big deal. I think we're at such a time in history you really can't, because it's going to get bad fast.
Well, yeah, it is going to get bad. So a number of things are going to start happening. So anyway, so just to finish my thing there. So I really thought it was important to try to reach the masses, and I've been trying to figure out the magic potion that gets me that big platform, that big audience where I can, so I joined every movement that I could possibly join, and of course part of that was the PPC, part of that was then the Yellow Vests, and then of course the Convoy to Ottawa, and all of these things, and it's been an evolution for me too, because I was never an activist per se,
right?
Although I've always been a rebel. I've never been really a public activist, but now we have to. Because, when you say that you felt like you had no power, well, that's the way most Canadians feel.
Yeah.
And the only way that they're going to feel empowered is by uniting the masses. And the only way you're going to unite the masses is to show them a common enemy. And because there's so many issues created from this agenda that they're pushing, it tends to divide people by issues. But if people understood that these issues were related to this common enemy, to this agenda that is being created by communists and fascists and Islamists, once people understand that this is an attack against Western civilization, it's an attack on capitalism and the free market, once people understand that and connect these dots and these issues, then we all of a sudden can unite against it, and then we all of a sudden we have power, because the power really truly does lie in the people, but the people have to exercise that power, and they're not going to exercise it unless they're informed. So my mission has been from day one to inform and educate as many people as I possibly can. So, that's how I've arrived at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you have any estimate on, I don't even know how to say it, but do you think you've brought people to see, like, that you were even totally left? I almost hate to use the word liberal, because someone corrected me. That's more, I guess some liberals are very centrist. There's the old type of liberals, which were, I guess, more normal. I don't know enough, but do you think you brought more people over to your way of seeing things, that they're like, that you turn that light on for them?
I know that I have, because they've reached out to me. It's not in any great number. The biggest thing that I've found is the people that were already sort of frustrated, already sort of angered, even getting them to understand what created that frustration and anger, what the issue was outside of that particular issue that they were aware of, and connecting the dots for them. There's still a resistance to accept that this is a bigger thing than just Canadian politics. This is bigger than, for instance, Trudeau. This is bigger than the Liberal Party. This is bigger than, anything national. And that's hard for people to wrap their head around. And the problem is, it's also overwhelming. Even for me, who, I've been researching all this stuff for years, it's overwhelming, and it's draining, and it's taxing. And then you throw on all of the resistance to any of this information by the public. It's extremely frustrating. And so all of these things, can really work against you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't have a choice. Like, I'm one of these guys that if I find that there's a problem, which I've now, of course, found through all of this, you know what? I have to do my best to try to fix it. I wish sometimes that I could actually be like most Canadians and just put a bubble around myself and ignore it all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my wife would be happy if I did that. And
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, I know this, I understand it, and I'm watching it happen in real time, and I'm watching the consequences happen, and I'm watching Canadians wonder what the hell's going on, and I have the answers, and I know this, so I have to do what I have to do. And it's in my DNA, and until we can, properly oppose it and take our country back from it, I'm going to keep going. And if it kills me, I guess.
I think a lot in the last 2 months have helped our cause a lot.
Yeah. It has.
I think a lot of people, and just from a Canadian perspective, are saying, okay, the Conservatives have a majority and they're doing nothing. And I think people are waking up to what Andrew Scheer's, what the Conservative Party is. From my perspective, what I've been hearing, where they're actually doing nothing, and I know that they were hardcore Scheer supporters, Conservative Party supporters, and they're like, okay, he's not acting, and I'm not gonna gloat, I'm not gonna shove that in their face, because I know I was supporting them, right? And there was one time on Twitter, I had said something about Harper and the veterans, and someone all out yelled at me about how badly Harper had treated the veterans, and I'm like, what? But he's the Conservative Party. That didn't make sense to me. So I filed it, and I'm like, okay, this is confusing to me. And then I had to listen to Mark Levin on his radio show, his podcast from the US, to learn what a true conservative is, what conservatism is.
Right.
Then I held that standard against the Conservative Party, and I'm like, holy, are they not conservative? There's nothing is matching up.
Right.
Even their constitution, they're all set up differently, but the principles and the values is universal. And that was a real waking up moment for me. And I was like, oh my word, I can't support the Conservative Party. And I'm not going to push other people. They're on their journey figuring that out. And also even speaking, and some people have asked me, send me articles, tell me what news is going on. Because of my role in the community and my job, I cannot be political, and I have to be very anonymous on what I do. But the odd time you'll say a comment and they're like, okay, send me stuff. This one person said, do not talk to me about any of this anymore. I cannot handle it. And it was just the one issue on the New York abortion issue. What they had changed that, and I'm like, she says, that's not true. They don't do that. They don't let people give birth to babies and let them die. I said, look it up. And she says, I can't deal with this. I cannot deal with this. And so, like you were saying, a lot of people can't handle what's going on.
No, they can't. And that's it. I mean, so, I refer to Canadians sometimes as the sleepy, dopey Canadians that don't understand. But it's not even that they don't understand. It's that they don't want to understand. Because it's too overwhelming, and it's going to burst their bubble they put around themselves. And it's going to upset their own personal little apple cart, and so they tune it out, and they don't want to know. And I think that's the majority of Canadians. Because if I sat down with any Canadian from here to Vancouver or to Halifax or wherever, you know what, the core values that we share would be those that, like freedom, justice, liberty, compassion, tolerance, all of these things that Canada's sort of a shining light, or historically has been.
Yeah.
We share those across the board.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so if I could sit down with these people and have a conversation and say, this is what's happening to those things that we value and that we share, then, like, people are still stuck in this whole left-right paradigm, right? And it's either blue or it's red, and that's it. But it's so much bigger than that, and it has to be I mean, the establishment has made it much bigger than that. Like, there's no daylight between the conservatives and the liberals, and that's by design. They're all committed to this global governance and this whole agenda, and so we have to respond with this in kind, and shed this whole left-right paradigm and make it's about nationalism versus globalism, which is ultimately socialism, communism.
Yeah.
But if you ask, for liberal voters, if you ask them, do you want your socialist policies to be created by Canadians in Canada for Canadians? They'll say yes. Okay, what about socialism created by a foreign entity, unelected, and imposing policy that applies to you exactly the same as it applies to Nigeria or Istanbul, Turkey, or wherever? And they would say no, right? Like we want to, and so those are the people that I want to reach, because again, it boils down to values. And if you took the politics out, you took this traditional paradigm out of it, and just said, what are your values? Let's fight for these values. And what's the enemy to these values? It's very easy to identify what that enemy is to everyone. And then all of a sudden, then we have some unity. Then we have, something to fight against. And we are in a fight, and we are in a war. As we speak, we are. And we have been for a little while now.
Yeah, it is a war. And a lot of people don't realize that. They will. It'll get blatant enough if nothing gets done, especially in our country.
Right, and the question is, like, we're also, this war is a race, and if the globalists who are winning that race right now, keep moving at the speed they're moving, we're going to have a whole lot of catch up to do in a very short amount of time. But again, so are we going to catch up to them in the very near future? It's going to come down to consequences, and when it hits people on a personal level, and this is what the coronavirus has done, it hits people on a personal level, and it's starting to get people to pay attention, and so that's a good thing. So we have to capitalize on that. We have to move on that, and then educate these people as to what the hell's going on.
And it can get worse, and your life could never,
maybe
ever be free again.
Exactly, and so if we, that's where this is headed. So if we don't wake up in time as a country, then the globalists win, and everyone will be wondering what the hell is going on. Why are we living in a communist state? Well, because you didn't pay attention, and I didn't do a good enough job getting that information to you. So
right, we can do them we can only do the very best that we can do as individuals, right? We're responsible for doing that much. I think that, we're at great disadvantage because we don't have a free press, and that shuts us down. So getting our word out there is really tough. What do you think about that? Are you still there?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's incredibly difficult. I mean, we're not only going up against the media, which is a huge roadblock for us, but I mean, this has been going on. This cultural Marxism and this whole agenda has been going on for years and years and years, even before the First World War, really. I mean, that's, there was when, I'll give you an example. So when Lenin, created the revolution in Russia, and it's a long discussion, but I'll make it short. So when he created this revolution, there was an offshoot of, the Fabians, who didn't want to achieve their goals of communism through revolution. They came at it from a different angle, that they need to get into the institution, into the schools, into the media, into the press, and all this thing, and they'll do it drip by drip, and that has been far more effective over the long run,
right,
than revolution is, right? And this is what we're dealing with right now, and of course, you take that template and stick it over top of the UN and the globalist agenda, the Sustainable Development Agenda. It reads like the Communist Manifesto, just a lot more prettier words, but the outcome is the same. And they're using all of this work that the Fabians did by getting into our institutions and into our schools and our media and our bureaucracy. And so it's incredibly daunting for people like us to bust through all that. Yet, we still are able to.
Yes, and it's set up so that we do get discouraged and give up. So lately, my focus has been to people. You never know that one thing that you say or do to help this could make a huge difference. You know, I see no views on my YouTube channel or on my tweets and when I put videos out, but you know, my fiance reminds me they are purposely making it look like no one is watching your stuff so that you do quit and get discouraged. And I'm like, oh no way in heck am I quitting. Then I just work 10 times as harder. I come home from work, I'm exhausted, but right away I'm researching, I'm doing stuff. I do it with a little bit different style than you do, but all combined, I think it creates such an awesome thing. You've been a great fan of mine and encouragement to me. And that's one thing that I found incredible, which is why I started my I Am a Canadian, as Nikki put it, campaign, because I was astounded at how amazing we were, but that narrative never gets put out there. We are being beat down by Trudeau. We're being beat down by the media. I saw them beat you down and the convoy in the yellow vest, and I knew that it was all a lie. And I said, to heck with that. I'm going to work hard at trying to counter what they're trying to put out there.
Well, and we will. And ultimately, the common denominator for all of us really is freedom. And that will always triumph. It's just a matter of how long it takes us to defend it. And, you know, again, it's every one of us that are doing things, regardless of, you know, likes or tweets or views or any of that thing, we're all part of the big picture. We're all part of the bigger response and really the team. And so it's, you know, we just all have to keep doing it because we're all part of it. We're all, you know. And we can't
turn on each other. We may start to annoy the crap out of each other. We may get, you know, have difference of opinions or different views here and there. But we got to stay united no matter what. You know, especially if we're trying to bring the left wing in with us, because the political spectrum is fine. It's when it gets to extremes, when it's globalism, when it's, I call them, you know, the left-wing extremist mafia. No, you know, but there's going to be people because of this whole coronavirus that are going to start to wake up and see. And still have your difference of opinion, but let's all fight together for the freedom to be able to say our opinions, to the freedom of speech.
Exactly. No, and one of the problems, you know, I mean, me being a true conservative and you know, somebody who is on the right of the political spectrum, although I consider myself also to be a classic liberal, right? You know, free speech and you know, let people do what they want in their own homes and whatever, right? Yeah. Like I'm a, you know, so I'm sort of like a mishmash of everything. But at the end of the day, the right, the conservative or true conservatives, have a really hard time uniting. Like the advantage that the left and the communists have is they're all about the collective. They're all group thinkers. Yeah. And none of them think individually, none of them think for themselves, and it's all about the revolution. It's all
that's
about,
very true.
You know, and so whereas the people on the right are about individualism and individual rights and you know, against the collective. And so when you try to go against that frame of mind, it's very hard to unite the people on the right as a collective. I don't even like saying that word in terms of what I'm doing, you know, and trying to unite. I don't like to use the word collective because that's such a leftist thing. Yeah. But at the end of the day, this is where it's difficult, but we can do it, is we have to respect each other's views and each other's goals and even their solutions. Even though if they don't line up with yours,
but if France can have their huge yellow vest movement, and you know there's tons of different groups out there on those streets, you know, and the Americans too. There's a lot of different types of conservatives, and they're managing to unite. We can do it. We just got to
Right.
somehow shake us out of our Canadian way a little bit of being too polite, you know?
Well, and in that,
something
because we've been
in our
polite,
culture here.
people aren't used to, dealing with people who are in your face and abrupt.
Yeah.
Because we are, so it goes both ways, right? So, yeah, it's just a matter of, we're all going in the same direction, just on a different path. And sooner or later, those paths are going to converge. There's no doubt about it. It'll happen naturally. Hopefully, we can encourage that natural happening. Before,
I think there is going to be a convergence on some sense, but there are going to be people that are just going to stay where they're at and not see it. There are going to be people that just won't see it ever, no matter how many times you explain it to them.
Absolutely, they will.
But I think it'll be a greater divide. There's going to be less of that middle ground that there used to be in time, in our recent times. So, you could be that middle centrist kind of, I call it now wishy-washy, because we're living in a day and age where that just can't exist anymore. It just doesn't. Yeah. That's that little bit of, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it properly, but it's just more clear. You're either for the UN and that whole globalism and global citizen, or you're not. You've got to choose. Thing.
So, I hope the day comes very soon that is understood as the big question, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where it needs to go, and it needs to go, are you globalist? Are you for global governance? Or are you for, Canada and our values in Canada and national governance? Yeah. And that's where the dividing line is. But once we get to that point,
we'll be at civil war.
Well, but I like our chances, because I don't think the majority will be in the globalist camp. I really don't.
You're very optimistic in that, Mark. I'm not quite so optimistic. Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is, most people don't understand what's happening right now, and if they understood that it was a war of globalism versus nationalism, and what all those things meant, I guarantee you the majority would be on the side of nationalism, but it hasn't got there yet. And
but what if they've just been lulled, like, into this? I see it from it almost like and it's different than you, so you can totally disagree with me, but I see it from almost like a supernatural type of aspect where you're just. When you're sleeping, you're in a dream state, you can't think clear, you can't even get out of your nightmare that you're in. So what if this group of people is just so much in this far left, they're in sort of this nightmare realm that they don't even realize they're in, and you can try and shine that light in there and they're just not going to see it. They're just not going to wake to it.
Excuse me. I get that, but I think ultimately, again, if you went to those same people and asked them a simple question, do you like freedom? Do you cherish freedom? Most Canadians will say yes. And as soon as they do, and as soon as we all understand that they would say yes, then we have something to work with. Again, it's just their ignorance, sometimes willful, sometimes not, but it is ignorance to the reality and to the information. But they're going to be exposed to it, and at some point they're going to cross their own line, and they're going to understand that globalism does not represent freedom. So the choice really is then, is freedom or tyranny? And you pick.
Exactly, yeah.
What are they going to pick? Well, I would suggest in most cases people will pick freedom.
You're very much more optimistic than I am. And that was another note that I wrote. It's interesting. Yeah, you have to be. There is a line, that was a note that I made. There's that line where I think, okay, with the last 2 months, the government crossed that line for a lot of people around the world, right? But yet, shockingly enough, there's so many people that are still the sheep and going along with it, and you're like, how is that even possible after all that's just happened? So
because they're still comfortable.
Yeah.
They're still in their bubble. They still have their own. It's interesting.
That line hasn't been reached for them yet.
Well, that's right. And most of these people are you know, they won't admit it, but they're about themselves. They're selfish, right? And they're individualistic.
Yes,
and
generally.
because their individual life hasn't been torn down yet, and their bubble hasn't been burst, but once it has, then, you know, then look out. So I am hopeful, and
Right.
I mean, I have to be.
But in history, where people bought to shut up.
Yep.
So,
right.
You know, what's the next steps for Canada?
Well,
That'll be a very interesting year to see.
People draw a lot of comparisons, you know, and I do it too. But you know, comparisons to Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia or China, and so. But in those times, the people didn't have the ability to share information like we do. And so for those masses to, you know, be ignorant to what was happening around them to the point of the Nazis getting control, or being ignorant to the point of the Soviets or the Bolsheviks getting control, you know, they didn't have a network. They didn't have a system of information sharing like we do. So I think we still have an ability. Even though we see all of these sleepy, dopey Canadians that aren't paying attention, they're going to be woken up. And when they are, there's still a way for us to get the information to them. Now, of course, these ways are being censored and they're being stomped on, but it's still far greater than what, you know, Germans had as far as information sharing, or, you know, Russians had, or any of these other people that were forced into the totalitarian state. So, you know, I mean, again, I have to have hope, because if I don't, then I'm just going to go build a cabin in the woods and forget about it. and so, and I think there's validity to what I'm saying. I really, you know, that's what gives me, you know, if I don't have hope, then I don't really have inspiration to change anything. But you know, and I've thought about these things for many, many years, and it's still the conclusion that I come to is that sooner or later they will wake up. Now, I don't know if it's going to be in time or how bad it has to get before they do. Yeah. And I would suggest that things will get worse before they get better. You know, but I still think in the end we win, and freedom wins. I believe that in my soul.
Yes. As a country, it's very, very possible. I think I feel slimmer hope than you do for our country specifically, when I started to see very good patriotic leaders or people speaking out like Tommy Robinson. I'm like, okay, this is what we need more of us that are doing that. You know, willing to risk it, willing to go to prison for telling the truth, because it's so blatant.
But you see what they've learned from Tommy Robinson is they gave him a platform. They tried to make an example of him, and all it did was spread his message.
It did.
So now what they do with us, you know, like I'm trying desperately to get attention by the media and framed any way possible. I don't care. Please just talk about me so I can get my message to the bigger, and they won't do it. Yeah. So they've learned some things along the way too, right? So
they'll make a mistake. Evil eats evil. They'll walk right into traps, and they'll make mistakes. They're not that good. Yeah.
No.
But
absolutely.
You know, globalism will still spread. But it's whether we can take our country back. The Americans are doing that. They're working hard to take their country back. So, you know, it's interesting to watch them. And I try and watch, okay, what is France doing? What is this country doing? What's Hungary doing? What do they do to take their country back? What are the things that are working? So some countries may survive it, and some might be totally succumb to the UN and the globalism. It's up to the citizens and how much they want to fight for it.
Well, that's why they're focusing so heavily on Trump and so heavily on the States. Of course, the States is the big beacon of freedom and basically the top of the heap when it comes to Western civilization and everything we cherish. So that's why they're the big target. But all these other countries that are coming up, like Italy, you know, Hungary, Austria, even the Netherlands, you know, they're getting into parliament with these populist nationalist groups. Yeah. And Sweden has one even. So, you know, it's coming, it's moving along. Australia, New Zealand, same thing. You know, so
And that
it's
shows
happening.
a lot of people too, because they'll wonder, okay, well,
Exactly.
what's going on in Italy? What's going on here? Because that's what
Exactly.
caught my attention as well, you know.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it's important for Canadians to see that, because Canadians, generally aren't, outwardly proud or prideful or patriotic of their country, unless we win a gold medal.
No.
But if they see that other countries are experiencing the same issues and actually standing up to these things that are creating the issues, then then Canadians will then say, well, it's okay for us to do that too, then, right?
Exactly.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of Canadians that are like that. We're not a country that leads. Unfortunately, our politicians have put us in a position that we're a country that follows. They like to brag that we're leaders, but
no. Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing, and that's what we're dealing with. So I'm hoping, and that over time it'll happen. It's just as frustrating it is, we have to sort of be patient and wait for the consequences to wait for them and be there. Be a soft place for them to land when they finally open their eyes and realize what's happening, and say, okay, so this is what's happening, this is why it's happening, this is what we need to do to fix it. And okay, so let's fix it. So, we'll see.
Yeah. Big sigh. You must be exhausted. I worry for him. Like, boy, that guy's working hard all day. He's got family. And now you're preparing for this huge protest rally thing, right?
Yeah, I go through little days where it's like I'm so tired and exhausted that I just have to, do something to recharge.
Yeah.
And so, but you know what? I mean, the biggest thing for me is that I see results and I see people waking up, and that just inspires me more and fires me up more. And so it's a good thing, and it doesn't bother me as long as I see progress, as long as I see movement, to the end goal. Then whatever it is, what it is, I'll do what I have to do. But I did make a conscious effort a little while ago to tell myself that I have to pull away at times and just get out in the bush or go for a paddle in the canoe or just shut it off, right, and get away. So that's also helpful.
Yeah, of course. And but you could have your best epiphanies in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what's funny is when I do that, then I feel guilty. I feel like, well, I'm missing out on an opportunity. But that's just the way my mind works.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
I went a few years where I shut everything off, and I would sit. I wasn't allowed to do anything fun. I really disciplined myself in the evenings after, my work. I was running daycare in my home. And then after all the kids and, it was quiet in the evening, I said, I'm going to sit in silence for an hour or two and just write whatever comes to me or listen and really, really listen. And then for me, because I'm very spiritual, then I'm wanting to see, okay, is God going to speak to me in those moments? But that discipline, it's important, because now these things just come into my mind because I do still take time for that quiet, and I'm writing. I probably have 20 notebooks here. It's just crazy, So that part is important too, because otherwise then we have nothing to say. If
absolutely.
And there might be something very important to say, and it could be that one important thing that can inspire the next great leader. I keep hoping, that we'll get more and more people rising to that and not chickening out because they're scared to be thrown in jail, because they defied Trudeau, and stuff like that. It is very scary. I get scared a lot. My dad told me, Denise, don't do anything. The government is going to get after you, because I sent him one of my videos at the very beginning. He goes, oh my word, Denise, don't do this. They're going to come hunt you down. And so that was the best thing he could do. So I'm like, darn tootin', you ain't telling me what to do, Dad. I'm going to so I start doing videos like once or twice a week. And I made sure my voice was even louder. So, and, but I'm scared a lot. I'm scared I'm going to lose my job. And my situation is really tough, you know, I'm in the middle of nowhere. It's hard to find job. You know, someone said, well, get more experience, get more, you know, specialty or whatever. Yeah, but I can't tell the whole story, right? Because the more I say, then it exposes who I am. So, you know, it's a little tougher, and women out on the street homeless is a lot more dangerous than a guy, I'm sorry, you know, and just a different situation. So I feel very, very scared sometimes, but I'm still going to do it. You know, I'm going to do as much as I can. And even starting this project, I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I know I have to. You know, you almost feel like you have to do, you probably have a very good sense of justice, and I do too. Yeah, if I see injustice in my community, you better move out of the way. Because I've seen that in my community, a disabled, handicapped person being mistreated. They had the wrath of me in 3 seconds. You know, so, and you have that sense of justice as well. So you can't sit back.
And a sense of duty, too, you know. Like
exactly. Yeah, for our children, for other citizens. They might not realize that we're trying to save them, but we are. Not that we think we're great saviors, but it's just that good citizen duty. You see someone get hit on the side of a road, out of duty, you stop. You don't think of the consequences. Hey, this could get me in trouble. I could end up in jail for helping this person. I'm one of those people. I don't think of that. You know, when I lived in the city, I see 2 totally inebriated people in the middle of winter. It's -30. They're not dressed properly. The one guy, he didn't even have a shirt on. I was the only person that stopped. I'm like, not on my watch are these people dying. They may deserve to die. They may be losers. They may be scum of the earth. But I value them because they're my neighbor. I'm stopping, and I'm going to help them out. And in those moments, like, it was quite the story what happened after. But, you know, that's, I think, what motivates me because I'm trying to help other people. I don't want to see Canadians enslaved.
Right.
You know, we see what happens to other people in other countries. What happened in Iran, they were a perfectly normal country. When I started digging into that, I'm like, whoa, what? This was in 1970, and Iran was just like us? That's how quick it can happen? No way.
Absolutely. No, and that's just it. And it's happening in front of our eyes. So, you know, and you know, for me, the other thing is, of course, that so many people have sacrificed everything for freedom, and you know, when is it my turn to stand up? Well, I'm living it. I'm in it. Yeah. And so this is, you know, it's just the other way to fight the war and contribute. So it is what it is. And
our generation didn't have a war. Our generation was somewhat spoiled. We had a great life until lately. It just really went down the tubes fast.
Yep.
Now, there was, in doing research for this, I was looking back onto old newspaper clippings, and I thought, well, I want to see what the Ottawa Citizen was saying. You know, in the 70s when Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister. I was just curious at how the media treated that. And, you know, it was quite a bit different. The tone was different. The press was different. If anything, they were behaving like proper journalists and press and just reporting the facts. But also really saying, you know, the Trudeau has 50% unpopular with Canadians right now. And I thought, holy no way in heck we would hear that in our news. That, you know, Justin Trudeau is 50% unpopular with Canadians. So that has changed a lot. So I thought that was curious. I wanted to share that with you. The other thing was, in trying to figure out, because obviously, to me, my point of view is that Justin Trudeau seems to really hate Canadians. You know, because he does nothing for our benefit. He seems to, and it's interesting. I've heard the story of Pierre Trudeau in the train and people yelling at him and throwing eggs and tomatoes and whatever, right? But yet there was another story. They were traveling through Sudbury and he had his sons with him, and same situation.
I lost you there for a minute.
Oh, what part didn't you hear?
No, just the last couple seconds.
Oh yeah, so that situation when they were traveling in the train, it also happened when Justin Trudeau was with his dad. So
Right.
the people of Sudbury were screaming and yelling at the train, throwing stuff at it, and so Justin and the other sons were in the train with their dad at that time. And
Yep.
I really think, imagine how that affected Justin Trudeau growing up, seeing how much Canadians hated his dad, and now
Right.
he is in this position of power. So is some
Well,
of what he
you know
does
what, there's-
vengeance
he
on us?
definitely relishes this.
Yeah.
But again, it's bigger than that, and he doesn't even see Canada remotely close as the rest of us see Canada.
Yeah.
Like
He has a distorted
when
view. Yeah.
and 1 week after he's elected the first time, he refers to us as a post-nation state, right? So,
Yeah.
he's so committed and enveloped by this globalist agenda and this globalist idea that Canada isn't even really a thing to him anymore. And so, looking back, when he looks back in history and he has this resentment that he, developed.
I think he harbors it. I do.
Yeah, absolutely does. And he relishes the fact that the architects are of our demise because he has a,
From his point of view, it's a win-win. He gets power, position, fame, prestige,
Absolutely.
money,
Absolutely.
all that. I mean, and it's going to come back. He can try it. Of that I'm confident. It's not going to work out for that little twerp.
Right.
It just won't. He's not that smart to play this game.
Well,
like some of them are.
he's being used like
Oh,
the rest
totally.
of them. He's a puppet. He's not that smart. Everyone knows he's not smart.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because he, has
He's
a name
too dumb
and
to
he have to get
realize it.
elected.
Yeah.
And so he's just a puppet. And you replace him and throw somebody else in there. That's all they are too. So
Yeah, exactly.
unless you get somebody in that has a completely anti-establishment attitude and pro-Canada.
But
it is what it is.
Canadians have to be willing to support it, not tear it down when we get a good leader.
Yeah.
They have to be able to recognize that. So hopefully we'll just keep working hard, Mark. I'm going to draw this to a close because I don't want it too long and I don't want to take too much of your time.
Perfect.
But please tell us about your rally and give more details. My only caveat to it is if people can't get out there, just do what they can where they are at. The most that they can,
Yeah.
maybe rally a group of people themselves in their community. But go for it.
So first of all, it's not my rally. It was an idea. So essentially, when the day came that they said they were canceling Canada Day and going to have a virtual Canada Day, I thought, well, isn't that ironic? But also at the same time, I thought, screw you. This isn't your decision to make. Canada Day isn't about the government putting on a party for me. It's about me celebrating my country and what it represents. So you're not going to tell me we can't have a Canada Day. So essentially, that's where I started the ball rolling and just I threw out the idea, right? And I had some caveats and I had some ulterior, not ulterior motives, but I can't pull the word out, but it's basically ultimatum. That's the word.
Oh, okay.
Essentially asking, we need thousands. If we're going to do this, we need to do it with thousands of people.
Yeah.
We can't just, show up to Parliament Hill with a couple hundred and call it a day. That does nothing. It's useless. It's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to really stick my toes in the water on this until I see their support. So basically, from that point till now, it's sort of turned in and grown into a life of its own, which is
Awesome.
exactly how I wanted to see it.
That's good.
So, I used my website and I basically donated my website to the cause to be able to recruit people and volunteers and that sort of thing. So it's kind of the organizational hub, so to speak. But there's so many other groups now that are doing their own thing in regards to it. Like I said, it's got a life of its own. So
are they going to show up? Are all these groups going to show up there? This is Ottawa, July 1st. Right?
So basically, right now, we just saw a huge spike in about a week and a half ago. I had 400 people that had committed and emailed to the website.
Okay.
Which, some would think, well, that's pretty good, and I thought, no, this is terrible. But then just in the last couple of days, it's gone to 1,200. So there's really a buzz starting to happen.
Okay.
And that's just my website. So a lot of other groups are promoting this, and so I think it's happening. And so we'll just keep moving forward. I'll keep promoting it, and others are joining up. And I've been contacted by some pretty interesting individuals that have a lot of knowledge and a lot of and so it's
good.
It's good. It's I think it's happening. I mean, we're still a month and a half away. So
yeah, there's still time to get it out. Our dream number is 1 million people showing up. We get 10,000 and we're happy, or what? What are you thinking?
You know what? I think it's less about the actual number and more about what it looks like. I mean, if we're I don't know what that number is, but if there's aerial photos of thousands of Canadians walking toward Parliament or at Parliament, that's what we need to do, because then, and I want to be clear to folks too that this isn't a protest that's going to get the government off their agenda or move them off the path they're on right now. It's not going to happen. It just won't happen. But what it does is it shows the rest of Canada and Canadians around, from coast to coast, that see that, there's something going on here. This is enormous, this thing. And, get them to pay attention to what we're saying and what we're doing, and then educate from that point, and, build something much bigger, and get outside this little echo chamber that we're all seem to be in, and get into the national conversation. And so
everybody needs to band together. All alternative media, everybody that's on this side somehow needs, I don't know. I really do think that it needs to band together and support each other.
Yep. And I'm seeing that. I'm talking.
You think
to
it's
people
starting?
that are their own independent, and they're all, so far they're all on board, and they're going to promote it. And so that's good. And so I think, I'm encouraged. And, at the end of the day, I've been down this road a number of times. You plan something, and, it's usually about 10% of people that say, well, let's do it. 10% of those people show up.
Yeah, no, so this is different, Mark. This is going to be good.
This is different.
Yeah, I can feel it.
This is going
to be
much
big.
Different feel in this one. So,
and like you said, we may not see the numbers this time, Mark, but I'm going to tell you, this is going to be defining these next few months, and we just got to go for it, big time, all of us. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I just don't want it too long.
All good.
That was good. Awesome. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your support. You're an awesome friend. You're a great patriotic citizen.
Back at you. Keep them videos coming. They're awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I never know what's coming until it's there. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I'm so tired, give me my coffee. Oh, and by the end of the day, I have a video out. And I'm like, I don't know what happened, but it did. So it's almost somewhat magical. I feel like that's me. That's my videos. But yeah, so I wish I could do more. And the minute that I don't have to be anonymous anymore, watch out, world, because here I come. All right. Thank you, sir. Take care. Take it easy.
You too.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
If it's toxic to our families, toxic to our culture, toxic to our country, and toxic to our way of life, we'll talk about it. When all the others decided to go toxic left, we stood firmly right. I am your host, Denise in Canada.